Okay, good morning, everyone. 9:30, so we'll open the meeting. I declare the council meeting CL23/17 open and welcome everyone here. I shall start with a karakia. Whakatau mai te wairua, whakawātea mai te hinanaru, whakarite mai te tinana, kia ea ai ngā mahi. Ai. Please note that this meeting is being live streamed and the consequences of that. I think we have a full house of councillors in chambers today, so there's no apologies. And welcome back, Councillor Sol, who's joins us back after a little gap. There are no late items. Does anyone have a declaration of interest? No? Okay. There are no public excluded items, so I'll move to public forum. Now I have notice of two speakers who wish to speak in public forum. And first up, I have Keith Hay. If he's got the red light, it's on. There we are.
Mr. Mayor, councillors, thank you for the opportunity to talk to you this morning on behalf of the Karikat Waihi Beach Residents and Ratepayers Association. We're concerned that the recommendation in regard to the 7 pensioner flats at Waihi Beach is being rushed through without time for due consideration of several issues. 1. For option A, it is stated there is some discussion whether Waihi Beach is the best place for elder housing units due to lack of services currently available. Any objective, unquote, any objective assessment would show that the services at Waihi Beach are as good, if not better, than any other town where council has elder housing units. But this subjective observation by persons unknown indicates to us that if these flats are demolished, they will not be replaced. That is unacceptable. The TNT report upon which this whole recommendation is based has not been appended to the recommendation. We think it is most important that councillors have a chance to read this report themselves before voting on the fate of these 7 units. We asked for a copy of this report, but council have not provided it, and we're concerned about that. We are told the report states, quote, the 7 units in question are exposed to flood hazard as high as H3, unquote, and also, quote, if these units were demolished, it would allow for a parking area to be established for the remaining 12 tenants. But the TNT report states H3 is unsafe for elderly, children, and vehicles. So why is TNT recommending the area becomes a car park? I'll just repeat that. The TNT report states that H3 is unsafe for elderly, children, and vehicles, and yet they're recommending that this area be used as a car park. Council stormwater infrastructure maps show 4 stormwater pipes with diameters of 900 millimetres, 450 millimetres, and 2 of 225 millimetres west of Beach Road that discharge in the vicinity of the pensioner flats. There is also a substantial overland flow across Jenkinson Street during heavy rain. And this comes from subdivisions on Maryview Terrace, which have been allowed by council without council putting in adequate stormwater infrastructure. The pensioner flats area is drained by 1 900 millimetre culvert under Beach Road. It is therefore not surprising that the flats flooded. We think that a better solution would be to improve the stormwater infrastructure so the flood hazard rating is lower. This is something that council promised to do, so why don't you do it? The report states that council is waiting to hear if they will get a cash payment from the insurers. We think it would be more sensible to get an answer from the insurers before deciding the fate of these flats. The report also states that this decision is of low significance because it does not affect a large part of the community and all the tenants have been accommodated somewhere. We know of someone who has been waiting 2.5 years for one of these flats. This decision affects more people than just the current tenants. And I'd just like to remind councillors that these pensioner flats were built using money gifted by the Stafford, Clark and Brown families. They were gifted to the Waihi Beach community. And though they may legally belong to council, they really belong to the beach community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hay. Were there any questions from members? No? Okay, well, thank you, Mr. Hay.
Thank you.
Appreciate the talk. I now have Ross Gowdy, who wishes to speak.
Good morning, Your Worship, councillors. Good to be here. Now, on the same subject, elderly housing, as most likely you expect. Now, a couple of things I want to draw your attention to. The first thing is that we have been very pleased with the staff's efforts to accommodate and rehome the various people that have been displaced by this flooding event. Secondly, if somebody would like to pass these round to the councillors, one on each. I note that the flats by the road, and you'll see them in the photograph, are deemed to be not suitable for small vehicles. Don't quite know why that is, but you will see on these photos, and this was taken the day of the 29th of May, the water actually came over the road where the fire engines are parked, and it is up to the bottom of the power box on those flats. So inside the flats they'll be walking around up to their knees at least with water. So I don't know how you reconcile that with being safe, but that's it as it is at the moment. I draw your attention to it. And I also wonder where we got the idea that there's some talk about it's not suitable to have flats in Waihi Beach. We've most likely got a queue for people there. They love the position. They're not worried about that they have to go down the road to the shops. They don't have to be front and centre. They've lived there for a long time. And in our view, this is the community board's view, that the money should be clearly established what it is, and that come back to council for a decision on what they do with it, rather than arbitrarily decide, well, it's some of it or all of it is going to go onto a car park. But I've got here at the bottom here, we have to fix the stormwater. Otherwise, we're all in trouble. And there is ways, and the stormwater team are addressing that. And it means more capacity, but it needs more capacity on the outlet as well, because you can't keep on just putting more and more stormwater down to Walnut Avenue as Marine Avenue and below the road without letting a way out. So I'll just bring your attention to that. Thank you very much. Any questions?
Thank you, Mr. Galley. Any questions for him? Councillor Henry.
Hey, Ross, thank you for coming today. You're someone who's been around in the capacity of an elected member for a number of years as a councillor and on the community board. In option A, you may have seen that there's a comment less than 7 units at Waihi Beach. There was some discussion whether Waihi Beach is the best place for Aotearoa units due to the lack of services currently. In your knowledge, would you concur with that, or?
No, I don't believe that is so. The pensioners that are there have always enjoyed the place. They've got easy access to the beachfront if they want to go there, and they just love it. There's only one thing, actually. They have had trouble with parking their cars out there where the fire trucks are, and there's been involved in several crashes on that road. But now that we've got a footpath just north of them with big yellow lines, there's limited capacity. So making a car park is quite sensible. But that, if it is not high enough, if we have a flood event, all their cars are going to go underwater.
And are you able to give
Councillor Henry, can you move your mic so that you're speaking into it, please?
Are you able to give some background, once again, because of your knowledge and length of time and working in the beach area, about the nature of how those pensioner units were established?
Yes, as Keith Hayes said, and I concur, it was a combination of the several local people, the Brown family, and can't remember off the top of my head who, Safford Clark, and they actually put up quite a considerable amount of money for the building of it. I've yet to ascertain whether it was the total amount or what have you, but it belongs to the Waihi Beach community. That's what it really amounts to, because they've put a lot of time and effort into it. Now, we originally had one of our councillors, Eileen Stevens, who looked after it as a community effort and with very, very minimum overheads. So it was, when they were all combined, it was the only elderly housing units that were actually ahead of time and making a profit because of low overheads and getting onto things straight away. So we have, as a community, a vested interest in making certain they're good, looked after, and will be there. There's possibly a couple of other places that we could actually establish another 5 or 6 units across the road, and a couple of other places. But that's entirely up to council to decide what happens.
Okay, I've got Councillor Murray-Bench next, and then Councillor Granger.
2 questions, thank you. Basically, you were saying the flats are needed.
Yes.
And the second question is, the flats look as though they're slightly below the level of the road. If we fix the stormwater infrastructure, is that going to really help?
It would help enormously.
Because?
Because essentially you've actually got to get the stormwater coming down from Jenkinson Street and down from past the Fire Brigade and other places going underneath the road. But that involves making a solution of taking the stormwater out from there, out to sea at Darley's Creek. So it's hand in hand, like everything. It's just not one simple fix. It's multiple things that have got to be done.
Councillor Granger.
Thank you, Your Worship. Regarding the picture, which is very helpful. So the flood line in here indicates that the water inside was about 400 mils above floor level, at least.
Yes, could well be.
Yeah.
Yes.
But this is not the block of flats that is the subject of
No.
today's.
What I'm just saying is this block of flats by the road is being refurbished. I'm not saying it's wrong, but I need to tell you, councillors, that it does flood. And this is the second time I know of in the last 13 years, as of it flooded 12 years ago and last year, that there has been water inundation in this block of flats.
So my follow-up question, and not for necessarily for Mr. Gowdy, probably for staff through you, sir. So we've just spent money redoing these and re-roofing this block of flats.
I'll refer that to staff, but I believe that's right.
Can you come up to the mic, please, Kerry?
Yes, so we have just re-roofed that block of units, the 4 units, because the Tonkin and Taylor modelling that we got done after the May 29th flood shows that those units were suitable to put people back into. It's the other 7 units that we're not comfortable putting people back into based on the Tonkin and Taylor modelling.
Okay, so we're not trying to get into a debate here, but I thought that was just helpful. Was there anyone else who had a question for Mr. Gowdy? No? Okay, well, thank you.
Thank you,
Ross.
councillors.
Appreciate that. So I'll move on to confirmation of minutes. Item 9.1, page 8, which is confirmation of the Community Committee minutes. And there is a small amendment to make to item 9.1, Tauranga Western Bay Community Event Fund, second bullet point. Round 3 of the fund closed on the 20th of October 2023, and round 4 closes on 20 January 2024. I think you said closed before. So with that minor change, can I have a mover and seconder? Councillor Murray-Benge, Councillor Henry. Put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Page 14, minutes, the District Plan Committee on 26th of October. Do I have a mover and seconder to confirm those, please? Deputy Mayor Scrimger, Councillor Granger. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Minutes of the council meeting on the 26th of October. I shall move those. Deputy Mayor Scrimger. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Minutes of the Projects and Monitoring Committee held on the 31st of October, and there's a small amendment on this one, that item 2 of the minutes being present be amended by removing the typo "crabsent" from this section of the minutes. Yes. Tackling the big issues, eh? But anyway, Councillor Thwaites and Councillor Sol. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. Minutes of the Audit, Risk and Finance Committee, 7th November. Councillor Granger and Councillor Coxhead. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. So we now move on to the substantive reports. Item 10.1 on page 55, which is the proposal to extend the lease area for Katikati Rugby and Sports Incorporated at Moore Park. So it's Peter here. Oh, Cedric.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. So this report is, we're coming back after the PNM committee on 8th of August, which the committee approved in principle to extend the lease to allow the Katikati Rugby and Sports Incorporated Club to build a small shed of about 24 square metres for their sports equipment. So we've gone out to public consultation as per the Act, and no submissions or objections were received. So with kindness, if you're happy, I'll take the report as read and answer any questions.
Okay, so any questions for Cedric? I've got Councillor Henry.
Is there the lease for a set amount of time?
So I understand it's just it's an extension to the current lease, and we're just increasing the footprint to allow for the shed.
Yeah, and where the photograph indicating where the shed is, and I have no problem with where it is, but it's not actually in that area. It's not in that position.
Oh, okay, I'll take a note on that.
Yeah, it doesn't seem to be like that was where the disabled parking was. It's actually been moved further down to the gateway into the reserve. So it actually made sense to me rather than have it where it was. But I'm just alerting you that it's actually not in that position.
Yeah, I think they'll still need to go through the whole process to get consent and go through all the requirements for that.
Councillor Thwaites. Councillor Joyce has seconded it. I did want to check, were there any further questions in between? No? Okay, so it's been moved by Councillor Thwaites, seconded by Councillor Joyce. Any debates? Councillor Murray-Benge.
I think it's wonderful to see a community continue to actually look after its sporting colleagues. And the one thing we're quite good at is sport in this district. And Katikati is no exception. So I'm happy to support the recommendation, sir. You've got to store your equipment somewhere, and I think this is a good decision.
Thank you, Councillor Murray-Bench. Councillor Joyce.
Obviously, I'm in favour of this. It's good that the netball club has somewhere to store their stuff, but there's also a proposal that needs to come back to us at some stage for netball courts for them to play on. We have a shortage of hard courts, public hard courts in Katikati. There is a proposal for netball courts at Moore Park. There's even potentially funding available. And I realise that due to constraints of people power, i.e. a lack of a suitably qualified person, we've got a vacancy, that hasn't progressed, but I would certainly like, following on from this, that also be progressed, because we have a lot of sports grounds, but no sports courts. And I'll also mention I've been approached by somebody who has access to some basketball funding and would, Basketball New Zealand funding, would like to put up a hoop somewhere. I don't think we're in a position to reinvent the whole of Moore Park right now, but if we've got money coming in the door, let's try and get the wider netball plan across the line as well.
Thank you. Councillor Henry.
Yes, just to concur with what Councillor Joyce says, it is really good to see that the netball are actually making a presence in Moore Park, and they have actually made a connection, affiliation with the rugby club. And whilst there are netball courts in Katikati, they are not fit for purpose. And so, I'm aware that we're looking at this and coming into the next long-term plan, but we really need to accelerate the actual design of them being set on the Moore Park, because they cannot go for funding without it actually being on paper. So that would be really good if we could see that as one of the first things that we look at in our long-term plan.
Okay, thank you. So if there's no more debate, I shall put those recommendations. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. So moving to page 60, which is the deferral of the long-term plan 2024-34 adoption. We have Emily to take us through this one, please.
Good morning, Mayor and councillors. This report that's on the agenda in front of you today seeks a decision from you as to whether you wish to proactively defer the adoption of the long-term plan by a 3-month period, so to no later than 30 September. Whilst it does currently not comply with the legislative requirement to adopt by 30 June, you'll be well aware of the significant uncertainty that exists in the sector at the moment, particularly relating to water management and transportation funding. So I'm going to take the report as read, but happy to take any questions.
I have 2 questions for you, Emily. Firstly, will this continue to allow the rates to be struck roughly on time, and maybe a couple of weeks delay or something, but would they be roughly on time? That's my first question.
So they would be by 30 September 2024, which is similar to what happened in this financial year, with a slightly later adoption of the annual plan.
And the second one, are there any legal implications we should be aware of for this?
Only those which are set out in the report.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Murray-Bench, questions?
Yes. Emily, you worked very hard in that policy section. Have we got the staff to actually do the work if we defer it for the 3 months? Rachel, are you satisfied that we can cope, because delaying it?
Through you, Your Worship. Yes, I am satisfied that I think the risk of rework is very high for staff at the moment, given the uncertainty that has been referenced in Emily's report, Councillor Murray-Bench. So I actually think that this is a more efficient and effective use of staff time, enabling things to crystallise in terms of our new government's position on certain matters, but in particular in relation to Three Waters legislation, further legislation, and transportation policy.
Just want to follow through and add something to that. I think where we will run into some resourcing issues will be with Audit New Zealand potentially. This is going to change their timeframes. There are a lot of other councils looking at the timeframes for their LTP, so we're already having conversations with them about this delay and what it might mean for their resourcing and timing and when they can support us.
Councillor Wickers, then Councillor Henry.
I was listening to an interview with the Mayor of Gore yesterday. It sounds like that they have basically canned their long-term plan and are going to run for another 3 years on their existing one. Is this an option?
Through you, Chair James. Yes, it is, I guess, an option, but I think it's probably one that we wouldn't term as a practicable option. I think the reality is that there's been so much change in the legislative environment and the wider New Zealand and the world in all sorts of different ways that we would end up having really overly substantive annual plans every year if we were to not develop another long-term plan. And we would also end up consulting every year because we would be so far from the years 4 to 6 of our long-term plan that we set in 2021. That I think it would make a really difficult conversation with the community.
Councillor Henry.
Yeah, I realise this has been a hard decision to make, but I think it's a very important one, and I think that local governments need to take abreast of what has been happening to them over a very, very long period, and we need to stand up and
Councillor
say
Henry, is this a question or is it your comments? We can have comments later, but this is question time.
Oh, so, no, I don't know whether I've actually got agreement, but what I'm saying that I agree, and I applaud you for what you're doing because we don't need to take this anymore.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Henry. Were there any further questions? Councillor Crawford.
In regards to auditing, how is this going to impact? Saying that, you know, they're backlogged and understaffed and all that kind of stuff, how is that going to impact getting audited in time?
We met with our audit director and team this morning about the annual report, but we also did start some discussion about the LTP. It is going to change the timeframes for LTP, for our our consultation document, and then the accounts that come later. So look, I think the conversation we were having this morning was a lot of councils are in similar positions. Other councils are looking to delay. There is actually a very strong possibility that when the new government is formed, that they may come in over the top of this and delay for all councils by 3 months, if not a year. So they are going to be looking at those options. All we can do at this stage is to be very clear with our audit partners around what the implications mean for us in terms of our revised timelines and work together to make sure that we're supporting each other. So we've started those conversations.
Councillor Granger.
Sorry. Happy to move 1, 2 and 3B.
So Murray's moved 1, 2 and 3B. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Henry, I think you got in there pretty quickly. Thank you. So is there any debate? Councillor Joyce.
Just briefly, I mean, it's better to get it right than get it done fast. So I totally agree with this. We're in an uncertain environment. There's been a change at the top of central government and we have to roll with that. So thank you, Murray and Anne, for moving. I agree with you.
Okay, Councillor Murray-Benge.
I think this is a really important decision, and what really bugs me is that we get a government, don't listen to the community, and then we have to go through, do all the work that they demand of us, central government, and then come an election and people speak, and suddenly we have to then decide again to what we're going to do and with the new government. And I just feel as though local government is not respected enough in this country, and it has not got the respect that it deserves, because we're the ones that are closest to the people, and I just wish central government would listen to us more often, sir. I think it's one of the tragedies of local government in this decade that we should find ourselves in this position. We've got no alternative but to do what we're doing. We've got great staff and they will do it, but they had to respond to the previous government's decisions, and we had no alternative from that. And so it's an extremely frustrating thing for all of us. And I just think local government demands more respect than what it's actually getting. Thank you.
Okay, I have Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour, Councillor Sol and Councillor Henry. So Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour.
Thank you. Yes, I do support these resolutions, but I have to say I find it very disappointing that I'm in this position of saying I support this. I do support what Emily has explained in terms of we're operating in very changing and uncertain times, and I think this is in reality a pragmatic approach to that situation and trying to position ourselves in the best place to deal with changing circumstances. So yes, I do support the recommendations.
Thank you, Councillor Sol.
Thank you, sir. Yes, again, I find myself having to support this. It's a shame we have to be there, but those are the circumstances, the cards we've been dealt, and we need to get it right as best we can, and we've got to give the staff the opportunity to try to piece it together and understand what world they're going to be working in. It's a must do. Thank you, sir. I just wish them all the best as they go about it.
Thank you, Councillor Sol. I'm sure that's appreciated. Councillor Henry.
So, as I said before, I really appreciate that you have brought this to us today, and you've highlighted the fact that we actually can't really do a service to our community by forging this through. And that's the whole point of what we have been talking about in local government. This implications of what central government do are affecting our communities, and to go ahead with this now would be actually making decisions that may not be viable when the decisions are actually made. So to wait and find out where we're heading will be the most responsible thing we do for our community.
Thank you, Councillor Henry. Councillor Granger.
Thank you, sir. Yes, well, obviously I support this recommendation, having moved it. We really don't have any option but to delay. We can't carry on rolling over the previous one because, as Emily's rightly pointed out, we would have to do so much work on it to get it into a current state that we might as well do the long-term plan in the first place. So this is our only option, and it is, as has been said by many, a shame that we're here. My only fear is that central government won't have got their ducks in a row in time for us to get it done by the 30th of September anyway. And we must impress on those that we can to make sure that they make whatever changes they're planning to make. That will give us some clarity so that we can get on with the job that we have to do to produce a long-term plan to tell us what this council is going to be doing. And unless we get that clarity from central government in very short order, we're going to be back around the table saying, oops, what do we do now? So all of those who have the ear of government, please ensure that they make the changes and give us some clarity. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Thwaites.
Yeah, I'm not totally, don't see this as a total negative. I think it actually gives us an opportunity to actually start the process immediately now, not looking at the specifics of the waters, and I don't think the roading myself will be affected, but anyway, we have some issues that have rolled over for year after year after year, and one's been pointed out in the past by Board Chair Gowdy from Hawaii Beach, that the Hawaii Beach Ward does pay a slightly different stormwater rating than the rest of the district, so that needs looking at. We had a situation at the Mokoro Community Board where a community of 131 houses come in and wanted substantial roading, and that property pays $72 a year in fixed roading rates for 131 houses. and it pays one stormwater rate for 131 houses. So I don't believe we've got our system exactly right, and I think some tweaking can occur that isn't related to the waters, but can be sorted out ahead of that. And I think we should not sit on our laurels. We should get in and do the mahi now and sort out those pre-issues beforehand, because like I said, those anomalies just keep creeping along, and they're there glaringly to see, and we need to address them. That's my view.
Thank you, Councillor Thwaites. I'll say a few words. This is a considered and deliberate decision, given the uncertainty we're facing. We want to have the right conversation with the community, not one based on conjecture. And that conversation is just not possible right now. So I'll be supporting this motion. Murray, did you want your right of reply? No? Okay. If there's no other comments, I shall put the motions. That's recommendation 1, 2 and 3B. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. So we now move to page 67, item 10.3, which is the annual report 2022-2023. Azura.
Thank you, and through to you, Mr. Chair. We've got Leon, our Audit Director, here today, and I'll welcome him up as well in case there are questions. Today's report, we are recommending that we adjourn this item till the 14th of December. The reason being we're still working through our annual report, and our audit team do require a little bit more time to get through this annual report. We have discussed for a verbal clearance next Tuesday, and we're working towards that. Our teams are working closely with our audit partners. In terms of the annual report being available, we will be publishing this within the December published document, and the full report will be made available then. And open to any questions from either myself or our audit partners. Thank you.
I think I've got a question for Leon. Thank you for coming today. Can you give me confidence that you will be able to give verbal clearance for the annual report on Tuesday, as is currently highlighted by Azura?
Yes, thank you, Bishop. We're definitely working towards it. There's bits of information outstanding that we're collating, then working through everything that had to change in the annual report. So I'm carefully optimistic, but more optimistic than careful that we'll get there by Tuesday.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Councillor Henry.
Maybe I've missed something, but the report was to be tabled?
Yes, I can take that. So yes, it was supposed to be tabled today because we're still working through the process. We've just adjourned the report to the 14th December. Thank you.
Councillor Granger.
Through you, can I ask a question of the audit?
Yes, please do.
Given the steep increases in audit fees from the Office of Auditor General, does that imply that audit are going to be bringing more resources on to avoid this happening in the future, those long delays we're getting from audit?
Thank you, Councillor. I think that's something we'll continue talking to management about. So we've got a debrief meeting to understand how we both can deliver better in future. So I don't think it's prudent for me to now talk about that until we had a chance to talk to management about it.
Okay, so if that's in the questions, I shall move that. So instead of the recommendations in the agenda, I'll move that the item 10.3 annual report 2022-23 be adjourned until council meeting 14th of December 2023 at 9:30 a.m. Do I have a seconder, please? Councillor Crawford. I'll put the motion. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you, gentlemen. So we now move on to item 10.4 on page 70, which is the removal of flood-affected pension housing units at Waihi Beach. Kerry.
Good morning, Your Worship and councillors. I take it that you've read the report and I'm just here to answer any questions.
Any questions? Oh, I see a few. So okay. I think Councillor Soul got in there first, so we'll start with you.
Thank you, sir. I have a couple here, and that is to do with the report. And one is I'm really interested as to what services we are lacking that could make pensioner housing not being worth having in Waihi Beach. That would be the first one.
Okay, so that's good because that'll probably answer a lot of people's questions. So I actually regret putting that statement in this report because it's actually totally separate to the issue that the paper was intending to address, which is the fact that those 7 units are not safe to put people back into, and we need to demolish them. And while you agreed to that in executive forum, I need a resolution to do that. So Councillor So, I do regret putting that in there.
Cool.
The services that they lack, that we've found that some of the elder housing tenants that we relocated, they go to doctors out of the district. If they need input from social agencies, then they have to go out of the district. So we did experience that with a lot of the 11 people that were displaced during that time. That's not to say those services can't come to Waihi Beach.
Thank you. That's a good start. And I can understand we do things at times. But now the other part to the social section there in A that also really concerns me that it's missing. And, you know, and so I'm asking actually, why have we not got in that report something about leaving and having elderly people able to age within their community? Why haven't we considered as part of this as to why they should move away from their friends maybe that they've had for a lifetime?
Because this report is not about the future of elder housing at Waihi Beach. This is purely a request to move ahead with the demolition of these particular 7 units. That's why that hasn't been addressed through this report.
John wanted to speak as well. Do you want to add something now?
I think Kerry has covered it. I think it is, and we heard from speakers in public forum this morning that there is this could be an emotional subject regarding strategy, long-term plans for elderly housing services, social needs in Waihi Beach, and perhaps we have encouraged some of that conversation by some of the comments in the report. I think we need to be clear that any future discussions about elderly housing in the area and the provision of elderly housing specific in Waihi Beach needs to be addressed and needs to be brought back to the appropriate committee at the right time. Right now, I think we all agree that it's clear that the 7 units are unsafe for people to live in, and that's the only decision that we are formally seeking right now, is to demolish those units that would be imprudent to have people living in. Actually, unsafe to have people living in. So that's really the only decision we're looking for today.
Thank you. Councillor Joyce next.
Thank you, Chief Executive, for that, and Kerry for that very clear clarification. I've still got a couple of questions. If option A is passed, where will the insurance proceeds go, and who will decide how they will be spent?
So I can answer that. So we currently had advice from the insurer that the units are insured for resultant property damage only. So the cost of the repair of the other units will be applied to those units, and that'll be the amount we get. So we'll be looking to seek just over 300, about 308,000 actually, dollars in insurance payout. With that money, we need to demolish the units, obviously, and make the land good. And in making the land good, and I know there's been a lot of talk about car parks, I think the car park talk it makes it sound like there's going to be asphalt and curbing and all that sort of stuff. The idea is to make that land good, put some metal down and allow the elder housing tenants to park their cars safely on the property.
And I realise that there were some issues in the report that we're pulling back from, but this report does suggest that we may not build replacement units in Waihi Beach. And given there are rules around reductions in council service levels,
Is this a question, Councillor Joyce?
What are the, sorry, this is coming right now. What are the consultation plans with the community before such a decision is made?
So we'd like to bring that back to you next year.
Cool. There's also a reference in there to financial modelling by PwC. Can we please see that?
Yes, so that will form part of what we bring back to you next year.
Yeah, I think that's enough for me. You've clarified quite a bit of what I was going to ask, so thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Coxhead, Councillor Wickers and Councillor Murray Benge. I've probably missed a few. So Councillor Granger and Councillor Henry as well. So start with Councillor Coxhead.
Thanks for clarifying about the discussion that was had around whether it was appropriate to have pensioner housing at Waihi Beach at all, Kerry, because I was like, discuss with who? But just to clarify, so I understood that the insurance did cover the upgrade of those units, all units that were affected. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, so that would still be an option if they were to be raised, for example, or made fit for purpose in that region, in that area?
So insurance wouldn't cover the raising of the units. They would purely cover the fit out, the recarpet and paint. No, they won't cover that.
Okay, and just on the PwC report, is that specific only to the Waihi Beach pensioner flats or the whole elder housing portfolio?
The modelling's been done on the whole elder housing portfolio.
Fantastic. So I guess we get to see the brief that they were given as well in terms of what we're requiring. And also, obviously, I'd be interested in seeing the Tonkin and Taylor report too.
Okay, have you, yeah.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Wickers.
So the recommendation before us is basically simply to demolish or not demolish. So I suppose the question would be, if we don't demolish, is there ways of, and drainage, the water level is the problem, is there mitigation to the safety concerns by better drainage fix that problem?
According to the Tonkin and Taylor report, no. And the advice of our stormwater, one of our stormwater engineers.
Thank you. Councillor Murray Benge.
I think I've got three questions. Mr. Hay referred to the fact that the flooding of the vehicles was in Tonkin and Taylor's. People can't go in because it's dangerous, and it is for vehicles too. So we're proceeding to actually put that into car parking. Have you got a reply for that, Cedric?
Yeah, I think the comment that that we've made is it's more about just making the land good. So potentially, in terms of stabilisation of the land at that time, in terms of exposed, it's definitely going to be prone to flooding. It was just looking at all different options, but probably not appropriate for this report in terms of stating absolute car parking. But the idea around putting metal down to stabilise it, you could potentially use it as car parking in the right setting on how you would shape that. But it's definitely not habitable for.
Right. A second question is the infrastructure, if that was improved for stormwater, which Councillor Member Gowdy said, would that help? Is that possible, and how expensive might that be?
So part of the Tonkin and Taylor modelling, you look at the potential impacts of another event of that nature, whether it's a 1 in 100 or a 1 in 1,000. then you model that against the existing infrastructure and potentially upsizing of pipes, and you take that all into consideration. So what the Tonkin and Taylor modelling showed is that that the risk is still too high to life, even if we did put the biggest pipes or the biggest possible. So the immediate thing to do is really just to do as much maintenance as we can, and then look at that in terms of a wider catchment approach to our stormwater. So it might not necessarily be that you upgrade the initial piping network directly related to those flats. You might reroute the water in another way, but there's a lot more work that needs to be done, but very unlikely that you can fix the stormwater.
Right. And my last question is, rather than demolishing, can those units be shifted?
So bearing in mind the age of the units and the condition of them and the cost to shift units that are on a concrete floor base, the cost would be prohibitive. We got prices to try and lift them with the concrete floors and it's prohibitive.
Thank you, Councillor Murray-Benj. Councillor Granger.
Thanks, sir. My question is, we were told that the report for the safety issues was that people outside could get swept away because of the depth and the speed of the water flowing. So that's the reason it's unsafe for them to be there, apart from the flooding in the houses. So my question is, and this car park idea then plays into that, and that may be a distraction, but what will we be doing to ensure that people are not in this area where they're purposefully going to their cars or inadvertently being out, hanging out the washing or something? Will we be fencing off this dangerous area or planting it out, or what are we doing to improve the safety of that?
I guess it's like any area around that district. If an event like this was to occur again, people need to get to higher ground. I think that contouring of the land would assist with what you're talking about.
Okay, Councillor Henry, and then Councillor Sol.
I can't comment on the car park at the moment, but if we get an opportunity later on, we'll talk about it. So I too was concerned with this report, that comments that were in it, so thank you for acknowledging that. And it doesn't often happen very often. Appreciate that. So my question is around, I am concerned with the way this has been dealt with. I'm concerned about the pensioners. I'm concerned about the community. We did a very, very good job, I believe, last triennium when we actually went round and we twice went with an independent person and spoke to every pensioner about what we were looking forward to do with upgrading our pensioner stock. And this I acknowledge needs to happen. It's in a direct flow path, and there's no way that if we have an event of 29 May, that the water would not come back down there again. That it's the natural way that it flows. It's a very narrow neck down there, and it's always going to happen. So my concern is about the pensioners, and I believe that the community and I would like to have some feedback actually, or by an independent person, on how they have fared through all this. But my main concern is about...
So, Councillor Henry, you need a question.
Yeah, here it comes. Is about the status of these flats and the land that it's on. I would like to have an investigation into what it means to be moving stuff off, and we can't replace them there. We can't put them back on, but where can we grow those? Where can we put the properties that enable us to have is what we had? We're taking away at the moment. What are we able to put back? But that land was donated. The buildings and money was put into the buildings by people that are currently in this community. And I think that before we move on, we need to have a look at what the state of that is, the history with it. So if we can do that, that would be really good before we make any more decisions on these flats.
Thank you, Councillor Henry. Councillor Sol.
Thank you, sir. Yes, this concerns me. So I wasn't fully aware that the flooding issue will continue to be a major one virtually no matter what. You're saying that this flooding issue there is, from the report from Tonkin and Taylor, won't be able to be managed particularly well. And that concerns me on this front. So, okay, I understand, get rid of the pensioner flats then if that's the case. But it also leads me on to, crikey, when are we letting other people know? Because number 53 Beach Road, they flooded. They're concerned. They're the other side of that drain. And we're discussing this one, and it just concerns me that there's that. And then I guess I've got to refer to Broken Leg Gully, where I activated my current position, is again in that issue. When are we getting some of this information out to these people as to where we're going to go? And I know that doesn't reflect on the demolishing of the units, but it really is part and parcel. And I think these people need to know where they're going, because they're the ones asking questions.
Yes, so I think we've obviously got ongoing work going there through the different community groups, and which Ross champions, and he's obviously an amazing advocate for the community there. So we are actively presenting and doing our ongoing modelling work and working through those 76 projects that we came back to council with. So I think there is a lot going on in that space in terms of talking about these areas, and we are prioritising the areas of importance. So I think I'm confident in terms that we are getting that messaging out there. I think in terms of the flooding risk, it's more around not that this becomes the new normal, but the real issue is that essentially, was this a 1 in 100, was this a 1 in 1,000 event? And unfortunately, although we'd like to just say it's not going to happen for another 100 years or 1,000 years, that risk profile is just too high. So it's unfortunate. So as climate change comes on and we are re-looking at our stormwater modelling and modelling against these new updated charts, especially the new risk to life ratio, very much the space is going to change in terms of how we look at stormwater design and modelling going forward.
Councillor Daly.
Kira, you said the insurance payout would be 308,000. Is that based on remediating the 7 units to livable standard?
So that's based on the cost of that it cost us to do the 4 that we've refurbished. So they will only pay us the same as what we've paid to refurbish the 4 that we've already done.
There was no discussion about the option of removing them and remediating the land or possible car park?
No, our insurance policy was around resultant property damage, so that the loss adjusters advised that that the payout will be based on the remediation costs for those other 4 units.
So my final question, do you anticipate there be any surplus left over after removing the units and remediating the land, or is it likely to be additional cost involved?
I will do everything in my power to keep it within that money. I can't say if there'll be a cost. I don't think it will cost that much, but...
Okay, Councillor Cox said.
You actually pretty much answered my question, just to clarify. So really the cost of removing the units is covered from what you're saying should be left over? Yeah. Okay. And the cost of, it would be nice to know this probably, the cost of maybe the concrete pad for the car park or the car park. Do we know roughly what that might be?
So I'm not even talking a concrete pad. I'm talking, because there's a lot of concrete in there already with these units and little concrete retaining walls. So we just need to take all those out. We need to get a flat piece of land and look at what's the best option. It might not necessarily be a sealed concrete car park, because what's that going to do to the stormwater as well? We just need to look at costs for that. No.
Yeah, just further that, I think the context of the car park will form part of the next bit of work that we come back to elected members with when we bring back the PwC modelling. Potentially what this has done is triggered what do we do next for the pensioner housing in that space, which come back to elected members to say, hey, what do you think about this? And a couple of options or just a workshop and discussion. In terms of that carping at Kerry's, right, it really is just removing the existing structures, possibly contouring in a way that you can ease the velocity of the water and depth. And I think it's kind of like, what do you use it for in a space that's still flood affected? And I think at the time was thought, oh, it could be an idea for car parking while we work through the long-term vision for Waihi housing.
Sorry, given that we are losing 7 units, of course, that has an impact on the rental income of the portfolio as well. So it would have been helpful to have had that modelling prior, maybe, you know, like 2 scenarios. Yeah, just a comment.
Would it be fair to, excuse me, would it be fair to say that after the $308,000 insurance money, after demolition and removal and some remediation of the area, there would be little money left over?
Yep, that's how I imagine it will play out.
Thank you. So I think that's the end of the questions. Okay, do you have a question or are you looking to move? Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour. Seconded, Councillor Henry has seconded. Speakers for and against, please. John. Councillor, Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour.
Yeah, thank you. So I guess in many respects it's summing up perhaps a lot of the conversation that has already been had this morning, but given the Tonkin and Taylor report, I believe it would be irresponsible of council to reinstate the units that we're discussing and to expect people to live in. We've also had reference to that report suggesting that, or heard in the chamber this morning, that it's perhaps not the only view of the world. Well, I do think we need to be very cautious, one, about spending, sometimes you need a second opinion, but we need to be cautious about spending a lot of money on other reports just to give us the answer we want to hear. And I don't think that would be wise. And in this circumstance, I think it's very hard in this year 2023 to go past the example of Esk Valley. And there's numerous other examples probably around the country this year, but we saw the devastation caused in the flooding there earlier in the year. But ultimately it came out that in 1938, 85 years prior, there had been a flood of very similar proportions through that area, but there had been massive development, housing, orchards created over farmland and all sorts of things like that were decimated in that flood. And so we need to be wise about what we observe and take note of what's happened in the past and not set ourselves up to fail. So it's disappointing to lose the opportunity that these houses accommodate, and I certainly do feel for those people involved in that. And I don't want to sound uncaring, but my own wife was involved in a group from the very eastern end of our district to put effort into providing care in a relatively small way, but did go and share with those people who were misplaced from those houses. So I do understand that need, but I do believe we need to be responsible about how we act, and so I support these resolutions.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour. I actually have Councillor Sol next.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, I guess in the end, little choice. I actually also must comment, one stage it was in my mind, I think what Councillor Wickers was alluding to, do they have to come down? Can they survive there for a while whilst we fix our flooding issues? But the report basically tells us no. So I guess in the end, the most sensible thing to do is to proceed there. As I've alluded to and asked questions earlier about a couple of areas there of services, etc. You know, I happen to be married to the president of Grey Power in Waihi, and she has 400 and something members, and a large part of our life is dealing with their issues because a lot of them live at the beach. And certainly I do stress, as I mentioned before, the fact that it is better for people to be able to age in their communities and to stay around their friends. And I hope from this that we can move on and re-establish some new homes there in the future, or how our housing is reshaped in the future to allow that to happen. So yes, I accept that the flooding issue is going to be too big for there. I hope that we can address them very promptly, the other people who are now obviously going to be affected. Best work we could get. Thank you for doing it.
Thank you, Councillor Sol. I have Councillor Henry and then Councillor Joyce.
Yes. Unfortunately, the events of 29 May have shown us that we have no other choice than to have these units removed because they are not a safe home for our elderly to be in. We're very fortunate that we didn't lose any life. If it had been in the evening, we may have. The speed in which that water travels down, the speed of that amount of water travelling down the natural lay of the land meant that it wasn't necessarily the volume, it was the speed that it travelled at that was highly dangerous for people being moving around in it. So yes, the removal is the only response that we can do. I would thank staff for the way that they have managed the whole scenario, though. They have been very responsive and very attentive to the residents there and have moved them into other accommodation. And whilst it was not necessarily in the area, they have, I believe, they've been very well housed. But I still do believe I would like to see some sort of independent review on that whole process. As we had done before, not because I just believe that it has not been done properly, just that I think that the independents really worked well with the previous review we had when we were looking at our elderly housing stock last triennium. And regarding the car park, I have no problem with the money going into that car park because the current situation is not ideal for those residents. We put in, by chance, something that we thought wasn't going to happen, was a pedestrian refuge, which is slightly up on the north boundary of the residential housing property. And that meant that there was a yellow line that went down in front of the residential housing that meant that they could no longer park their cars on the street. So they actually currently don't have anywhere to park. So they would be those ones that are remaining there would be very grateful for the opportunity, even though it would be in that floodplain. It's up to them to be able to move them to elsewhere for safety with the appropriate reports of an event like that occurring again. So, but passing this, we're only passing that we are demolishing those units. There is still a review and further decision making to be made on the status of the bequeathing of that land and how we will go about replacing the housing stock for the Waihi Beach community.
Thank you, Councillor Henry. I now have Councillor Joyce.
I fully take on that there's a lot of decision making to be done, but I'd suggest, and maybe the mover and seconder would be willing to accept this, I don't know, a couple of amendments to what was suggested this morning. The first one is recommendation 2. We're talking about the issue is considered to be of low significance. I think we've heard this morning that it's of medium significance, and I'd move an amendment if I get a seconder, or if the mover and seconder accepts it, that we shift this from low significance to medium significance. It may just seem a word change, but it does mean there's at least a nod to the community that we see this as more significant than perhaps we realised when we started out on this report. And I'd suggest adding a recommendation 5, that any decision on how to spend insurance proceeds realised from the Waihi Beach elder housing units after demolition costs, which is a change from what the Mayor and I talked about the other day, be subject to the approval of council. And that, to me, yeah, I don't know, first of all, do I have a seconder, I guess, before I can speak to it?
Okay, I think we'll take them one at a time.
Okay.
As two separate amendments. So is there, firstly, with the change from low to medium significance, is there a seconder for that, please? Councillor Coxhead.
I was rather hoping that they'd be accepted by the mover and seconder, but if not, then okay.
I think we'll do it this way, it might be easier.
Yeah.
So, is there any speakers for that one?
Well, can I speak to it?
Sure.
I mean, yeah, we've heard this morning. This.
Do we have questions first, please?
No, sure.
Sure, please do. Yeah.
Because, sorry, I'm not disagreeing with what Councillor Joyce has said, but early in my career around this table, when I questioned why something was given low or medium significance, I was given a lengthy explanation about the rules or protocols, whatever it is, that are imposed upon us that comes to making those decisions. So could we have some explanation from staff about why this is rated low as opposed to medium before we decide whether we support it or not?
Thank you, Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour. Perhaps I can call on a staff member to explain that for us.
I can answer that. So I viewed this against our significance and engagement policy, pretty much point by point. And the following matters when determining the level of significance talk about the legal requirement to engage with the community. Well, there's no legal requirement to engage with the community on this. Then it talks about the proposal or decision affecting the service level of a significant activity. So didn't consider it to be a significant activity when there's 66 elder housing units across our entire district. I understand it's an emotive activity, but under the significant, 66 elder housing units didn't constitute that. The level of financial consequence of the proposal or decision, the level of financial consequence is low when it talks about the loss of rent on the 7 units, and which will be offset by additional units in the Katikati development, potentially anyway. It talked about the proposal or decision affects a large part of the community and the extent to which they are affected. So basing that on the fact there's 7 units and therefore 7 people in the community directly affected by it. That's how I measured that. Whether the community interest in the proposal or decision is high, or are there divided community views? Well, I based that on what I talked about earlier. The one I missed, the likely impact on future and present interests of the community, including recognising multicultural values and their relationships. So the future and present interests of the community is limited to the 7 units. While there is heightened interest due to the present, at present due to the flooding, this hasn't been the case in the past. Whether the community views are already known from previous engagement processes. So this report was just to seek a resolution to support what council has already agreed to at the executive forum. It was purely seeking a resolution to demolish the units that are not safe from residing in, or safe for the residents, and nothing more. And then the last point to consider is whether the decision is reversible. Well, if we chose to rebuild those units at a later date at a higher finished floor level above the floodable area, then it is reversible. So that's what I based my low on.
Okay, are there any further questions on this amendment about the change in the significance and engagement level? Questions? Yeah. Come on. Councillor Crawford.
What is the difference between moving from low to medium in the sense of our requirement? you know, because I do understand it's about engaging community. So does what Rodney, Councillor Joyce is proposing, does that mean that that's a lot more work and cost for the council, you know, to do engagement, or is there a big difference between low and medium?
Rachel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I guess the first point to say is that the significance and engagement assessment is a subjective one, and the report author has talked you through the assessment through her eyes. So if council wishes to amend that, they may do so. But in terms of the point around the consequence of moving from low to medium, well, there's generally a consequential impact in terms of the extent and nature of engagement that you undertake with community. So the higher you go, the more there is an expectation of an engagement response that's potentially wider than what has been undertaken to date. So I do ask you to bear that in mind.
But just follow-up question there, Rachel. So there's no expectation on this decision about engaging the community on demolishing the units?
Well, council would have to satisfy itself about that in making a decision to move to medium.
But moving to medium would not imply we would like to go and consult.
And again, I'm not trying to be belligerent, Your Worship, but so the consideration that's been undertaken by the report author has landed on low and has been based on the direct engagement with residents that's been undertaken to date. If council wishes to resolve a change in the significance assessment, then it would also need to satisfy itself that the engagement undertaken to date is commensurate with changing the significance.
I'd just like to make a comment, not disagreeing at all with these comments so far. I'm just wondering whether we're confusing the level here with the decision that needs to be made today, as opposed to a want to make sure that we engage going forward appropriately around any future housing or the use of that land. So are we, you know, is there two separate points here that we need to consider? Is this more about how we operate as we move forward and the level of engagement that you're looking for, Councillor Joyce?
Okay, so we're still on questions. I have Councillor Murray Benge. You have a question?
Yes, I do, sir. Through you to Rachel, the horror that the elderly people in those flats went into during the flooding. There was no loss of life, but there must have been absolute terror on the part of some of them. And I would have thought that was of medium significance for our elderly community. So is it looking forward only, Rachel, or are we influenced between low and medium looking back? What influence does that have on the difference between low and medium?
Rachel.
So no, Councillor Murray Benge, the significance assessment relates to the decision that you are being invited to make. That is to demolish or not to demolish the units that are no longer safe for habitation by people. So in that regard, the emotional implications for those residents is not a matter that you take into account in determining significance. You are being asked to determine the significance of a decision to demolish. That's it.
I'm conscious we're getting down in some sort of rabbit holes a wee bit here, but Councillor Cox said, I believe you've got a question. We're still on questions.
Yeah, so further to that, now this is a question. So yes, of course, I was probably seeing it, thanks for what you said, John, because I was probably seeing it more as moving forward than looking back at this decision, which that did clarify that. So if we were to go with medium, that means then we would need to consult with the community about even demolishing, is that correct? And at what cost? what would it cost to consult?
Cedric, did you?
Yeah, if I can make a comment on this, I think when the purpose of this report, if I'm stripping it right back, was purely to look at we're coming into a construction season in a window where we know it's a floodable area. So Kerry and her team want to get supplies on the ground to remove these houses, remediate the area and stabilise it before the winter season comes in. Part of this process that we're going through, we know triggers a need to relook at what we do with Waihi pensioner housing. And we have started that work from modelling, other bits and pieces coming in. So I think the question is more, is when is staff going to come back with that, not the modelling options to enable a debate about what to do next with Waihi Beach housing, an update on what's left over in terms of the insurance sitting within the current account, and then potentially what consultation from that workshop that elected members would like to go out for in terms of the debate that you'll have as part of looking at the whole portfolio and then the specific needs for each area. And obviously of interest is Waihi Beach. So I think for this one, purely this one is about a health and safety matter. We had an event, we've had modelling done, we've had technical expert advice, we've taken care of our people in those processes, but this is really just to formalise and say that we've exhausted all our options in terms of what we can do here, and the most suitable outcome is to remove the housing, then consider what we do next.
Okay, question from Councillor Henry.
I'm very happy to let this lie as it is, but do acknowledge that I think that there was a medium significance here, because okay, there's the units had 7 people.
So this is not a question.
7 people were affected. So I'm asking, surely there is a significance in that the community who have got a vested interest in this establishment, and that families still live in the area that supported it, that gave the land, that gave money for the building. So isn't that, more of a moderate, taking units away without discussion? But I'm happy that the acknowledgement has been made by our CEO that he will take the community along with them, with us and the staff and the actions that they're doing in the future. I'm happy to let it lie there, but I do agree that it is a more moderately felt decision within the Waihi Beach community. But I'm happy not to go to the extreme of actually going back and doing the consultation around the removal of these units, because I understand the timeframes for staff and to get the work done. So.
Thank you, Councillor Henry. That really wasn't a question, and I'm going to take that as you're speaking to the motion. So I'm going to go to speaking to the motion. Other speakers? So Councillor, the amendment, which is to move from low to medium significance, and I'm going to invite Councillor Joyce to speak to that amendment.
Thank you all for the explanations. I didn't really think this would take this long. So, Kerry, thank you for explaining your thinking. Here's where I think we're going wrong. It's not just significant to 7 people. And you said your level of significance was based on only 7 people being affected. This is of interest to the whole of Waihi Beach. The community has paid for these. Elderly units are not occupied over the life of the units by the same people. There are other people looking to get in there. There are families. This is something, no, we don't need to do a whole round of consultation. I agree, but we do need to accept, and we need to think about this going forward, that this is what happens to these units, and we don't know if we've got the money to build any more, is significant to the people of Waihi Beach. And frankly, saying that it's not significant, it's only low significance because it only affects 7 people, misses the point. And I accept that's your genuine reasoning, and I'm not bagging or anything, but I don't agree with the idea that it's only significant to 7 people. It is significant to the whole of the Waihi Beach community. What happens to these units? If the bulldozers go in there, and we haven't got to that point, but I'm pretty sure they'll have to, then we need to explain to the Waihi Beach community before that happens why we're doing that. So that in itself says it's significant beyond 7 people. I'm sorry, but it is.
Okay, thank you. Next, I have Councillor Granger and then Councillor Thwaites.
Thank you, sir. I shall not be supporting the amendment. It's bad governance. We have a significance and engagement policy that we judge everything against, and making modifications on the fly on the basis of emotion and that sort of thing is just not the way it should be done. We have a policy, we stick to the policy. The policy says it's low significance, it's low significance.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Granger. Councillor Thwaites.
Yeah. I too won't be supporting this. Look, read the second line in bullet point 2 in terms of our council's significant engagement policy. We developed that policy for a reason, to give staff direction to do it. Don't confuse an emotive item with level of significance, because otherwise you might as well put another 1.5 years onto our LTP if we're going to play games like this. I suspect that we've spent more money in terms of council salaries around this table than is going to be left from the insurance payment after the debating this pitiful this point. And I just call it grandstanding, and that's simply what it is. So I'll leave it at that. Probably get thrown in.
Thank you, Councillor Thwaites. I'm going to make a comment. I think we're confusing items of interest with items of significance. I won't be voting for it. Are there any more speakers for or against, please? Councillor Murray Benge.
Sir, I was going to vote with low, but I agree that the wider community of Waihi Beach is interested in this issue, and they have suffered considerably, and it would be sensible to acknowledge that. I realise that the emotion has to be taken out of it, but we're talking about people's lives, and if that's emotional, I'm happy to live with emotional, because people live and die, but they didn't drown, and that's an absolute miracle in these units. And our staff were responsible for getting people out, and it wasn't easy, and I think they deserve a medal. I don't believe that we will do more consultation, but acknowledging that it was a serious issue, I'm voting with medium, sir.
Okay.
So can I just make a small comment on that?
Please do.
Is that appropriate? I just want to say that the community will be informed all the way along the way, as my staff have done to date. They've met regularly, weekly, with the residents and any other people who want to come along to the Waihi Beach RSA are welcome to come along. So we won't be rolling in with a bulldozer one day and ripping down the units. We will be letting people know what's happening. There'll be a construction timeline that will be shared with them, not only the residents on the site, but local people as well.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour.
Yeah, well, I started off from a point of saying, well, it's of no big deal to go to medium, and I was happy to accept that. I won't be supporting this motion. I think, having listened to the conversation, we're becoming at risk of being paralysed by analysis. And it's important, as has been outlined, to make use of the summer season ahead to get this issue. The one issue that we've been discussing, that is to demolish flats that we've been advised are unsafe to put people in. And so I think we need to press on with that and not risk having
Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour, I think we're going to keep it to the low versus medium, not the bigger issue.
Okay. So, yeah, I'll just leave it there that I won't be supporting this
Thank you.
amendment.
And with that, I'm going to put the amendment. So did you want to say something? Yes, you may.
Very briefly. I do feel that it's probably a shame that it didn't wind up being assessed in a medium level. But I do feel that it's very clear that our policy says, and how it works within the policy, and I was quite aware that it was quite structured, but I didn't have the time when looking at this initially to go through the policy, which my councillor next door has got it in front of him there now, that this doesn't meet that requirement. I feel it is of huge significance to the community of Waihi Beach, and to a number of people that have put in money and families that have put in time and so on. But the logical end to this is these buildings basically look as though they have to go. Let's stop mucking around and getting back to that other side. I will now support, actually not support the motion now, and let's see us get on with it.
Okay, so with that, I'll put the amendment, which is to change it from low to medium significance. All those in favour, please raise your hands. That's one. All those against, raise your hands. Against, that's lost. So we now move to the second amendment, the foreshadowed amendment, which has been moved and seconded by Councillor Joyce and Councillor Coxhead. Councillor Joyce, would you like to just repeat your amendment? I just want to make sure everyone's got it fresh in their minds.
It didn't come up on the fly. This has actually been discussed over several days, but never mind. That any decision on how to spend insurance proceeds realised from the Waihi Beach elder housing units, I've added 3 words to what I emailed around. So the next 3 words are after demolition costs. Agree, you've got this in your email. Be subject to the approval at a council meeting. So this is not on the fly.
So do you want to speak to that now?
Do you want to do questions or not?
Oh, okay.
I'm up to you. I'm quite happy to go ahead.
I think I'd be keen to get more into debate than further questions, but okay. Does anyone have any questions? Councillor Wickers.
So just to make it absolutely clear, there's the 4 units are being refurbished, 7 are being demolished, is the proposal. The insurance payout is not related to the 7 that are being demolished because there are no costs to refurbish them if they are demolished. Is that correct?
So the insurance company will pay out the same amount for the 7 units as what they paid per unit as what they paid for the 4 that have been refurbished.
So that relates to the 308 is tagged to the 7?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. Right, speakers for and against. Councillor Joyce, did you want to speak for this?
I can speak for it. I mean, all I'm seeking here is that if this money goes into the current account, beyond obviously the costs that are related to the site demolition, and we come along in a few months' time and we go, well, actually, we want to do something in Waihi Beach, and the money's gone. The money's been spent somewhere else in the housing portfolio. Yeah, so all I'm seeking to do is save. All I'm seeking to do, thank you, Don, your usual performance, I see.
Let's go ahead. Let's keep it. Let's let Councillor Joyce speak.
Let's also keep other members from talking over the top of members, please. If all I'm seeking to do is make sure that we're keeping our powder dry in case we want to do something. Now, I'm not asking any decisions. I'm not solutionising. I'm not saying this is what we should do. All I'm saying is whatever's left over after demolition costs, let's just keep that to one side until we have that broader discussion that is coming over what we can and can't do. And I think that's a reasonable thing to do. Yeah, and I did add after demolition costs, John, after your comments as well.
And I'm assuming you are suggesting within the boundaries of the current activity account?
Yeah, I mean, I think everybody knows we're going to keep this in the elderly housing account. But I'm just saying, once we've demolished it, once we've cleared the site, anything left over, let's just park that until we have that broader discussion about the future of Waihi Beach elderly housing, bearing in mind we're obviously going to be short of money somehow. That's expected.
Okay, Councillor Wickers, then Councillor Henry.
I would assess it that there will be very little left over, and so at what level do you bring things to the council to make a decision on? Like if it's 5K, just like by the time you demolish 7 units and reinstate the land, I can't see you getting much change out of 300K, and hopefully we don't have to pay more.
Thanks. Councillor Henry.
I would agree with Councillor Wickers, but in view of what I have been asking for, I would support this motion because I believe that we councillors need to be taken along on this journey with the council staff. So and that every aspect of elder housing is that it needs to be discussed with us, the budget, all the wash-ups.
Thank you. Councillor Granger.
Thank you, sir. I have not had a chance to think about this before. It seemed to have got missed out of the email chain that went round. But I won't be supporting it. I would be appalled if we had a car insurance claim and we had to decide what was going to happen to the car insurance payout. This is a management issue. It's elder housing money, it's ring-fenced for elder housing. Most of it's going to disappear in the demolition anyway, so I can't support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Granger. Other speakers, I've got Councillor Murray Benge and Councillor Sol.
I listened to Councillor Joyce, I've listened to Councillor Henry, and I agree with what they have said, and I'll be supporting the amendment.
Okay. Councillor Sol.
Thank you, sir. Basically, I think we also come down to, again, this Waihi Beach community, and it has really been wound up. And, you know, it's of great importance. Funnily enough, I remember when I first came into local government politics those years ago, the pensioner flats were pretty hot then as well. It's the optics of this, I think, are going to be more important than even what's left. It's the optics of what we're doing and how the people of Waihi Beach see themselves, or what the outcome from this, even if it wound up to being just enough for a packet of chewing gum, is being looked after on their behalf for their community. So I will support this motion, sir.
Thank you. Councillor Daly and then Councillor Coxhead.
I wasn't privy to the email trail, but Rodney did give me a heads up. I've thought about it quite a lot. We've got our current account spreadsheets now, and I did go in there and check to see if pensioner housing was separated by ward, but it's one unit account. So the dollar amount is insignificant in the big scheme of things. We've made a decision to prioritise Katikati elder housing development at the moment. They were in the worst condition and deemed the most urgent priority. You know, we've got units in Te Puke that need redevelopment as well, but the decision to prioritise Katikati means that Te Puke will probably not be considered for any redevelopment for another 10 years. So I think Waihi Beach, I certainly sympathise with the loss of those units. And when the time comes to think about the next raft of development, then the case will be made for Waihi Beach. And there's a strong case to maybe look there instead of elsewhere when the time comes to actually build some new units or redevelop units. So I'm happy to just oppose this recommendation, but I would like to still speak to the substantive motion.
Of course, Councillor Daly. Councillor Coxhead.
I'll be supporting this amendment, and I agree with Councillor Wickers as well. It's potentially going to be a very small amount of money. It's unlikely to be huge, but it's still the point of this particular portfolio is ring-fenced, and it is covered by a policy whereby we are held account for making sure that it washes its own face and it's no cost to ratepayers. So for that very reason, that's why I am supporting it.
Councillor Thwaites.
Yeah, I wasn't part of the email trail too, by the sounds of it. But looking at the current account, look, that activity is currently in deficit 1.4 million prior to the start of the Katikati redevelopment. Fighting over $10,000 is neither here nor there, but the whole district is funding that now. People are going to have to get out of this thing that they're looking after their own little patches. We district-wide, we look after what we can, and it is currently 1.4 in deficit, and we have to start turning that around, and we've set the wheels in motion to do that. So I think it needs to go into that current account. And then future decisions will be based on business cases that are brought forward that stack up and wash their face, like Councillor Cox said.
Councillor Mobend, you've already spoken, so no, sorry. Councillor Crawford.
Yeah, I haven't got a strong opinion either way. The question I have in my mind is is there a big, if we go the way that Councillor Joyce has motioned or not, how does that change this thing from a council's point of view in the way of workload and accountability and that? Because it seems to me like we're talking about perception here and how we're going to be judged on how we make this decision. But I'm just purely thinking operationally and governance in the two and how this should meet. I'd like to hear from the staff actually what it means to you, this recommendation.
So from a staff point of view, it's...
Hang on, I think we're past asking questions, so we'll just leave that for now. Okay.
Yeah.
So look, I'm going to speak before we put this one. The insurance money will go into the ring-fenced elder housing current account. This money is fungible or indistinguishable from the money we receive from rents. It immediately goes into reducing the current account deficit. Any decision for strategic spend in our elder housing space, wherever that will be, whether it's in Waihi Beach or elsewhere, will come back to council. We will be fully informed and decision makers on that. But to seek to ring-fence this money further within the already ring-fenced elder housing account is frankly ludicrous, both from a financial and a governance perspective. It certainly won't improve any kind of transparency, as some might believe. This amendment plumbs the depth of financial illiteracy and is ill-defined.
Point of order. I'm sorry, that's unparliamentary language and you're aimed at me, and I do not believe that is appropriate language. You're not dealing with the issue, you're now attacking me.
No, I'm attacking the amendment.
No, you're not. You're speaking about me. So can I ask you, please, it's your meeting, but to withdraw that, because that's an attack on me personally. Okay?
I'll just confer for a moment. In the interest of moving the meeting on, I'm happy to withdraw that. So this amendment is ill-defined in what it is hoping to achieve and how it would work in practice. I won't be supporting this amendment. So with that, if there's no other speakers, I shall put that amendment. All those in favour of the decision on the insurance proceeds coming back to us, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. And all those against, please raise your hands. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So the amendment is lost. Thank you. So now we move back to the substantive motion, which is in the agenda, and call for further speakers on that, please, noting that Councillor Saul and Councillor Henry have already spoken on this. No further speakers? Councillor Daly.
Yeah, obviously this is a motive issue. And I'd like to acknowledge Keith Hay on behalf of Katikati Waihi Beach Rapids Association and Ross Gowdy speaking in the public forum. I think they did make some reasonable suggestions about why don't you just fix the stormwater flow paths rather than remove the 7 units. I think we've had a response from our works manager on that. And I tend to agree that's a very worthy option, and I'd certainly support that if it was feasible. But when I look at the map of the area where these units are located, I think this is not just an issue for us, as a property owner. It's a significant issue that's already been flagged both in Waihi Beach and nationwide about the effects of more intense rainfalls and climate change and the potential for managed retreat to address these concerns. And in fact, in the first and foremost, we are and need to be a responsible landlord. So the health and safety of our tenants is foremost, but I think there is an opportunity for that land, it being council land, could be part of the solution for neighbours potentially as stormwater control or diversion in the future, because the private landowners and householders in the vicinity or in the whole area really are going to be looking for solutions for their own properties, and I'm amazed at $308,000 being enough money to rehabilitate 7 units. I imagine, you know, one house, one neighbouring house, the cost to rehabilitate them from an event like this would be quite horrendous as well. So I'm happy to support the motion, and certainly would have been nice to be able to fix the problem, retain the units in the intent that the land was gifted. But I think in future there is potential to come back to Waihi Beach when the time is right, and provide more elder housing. But we must remember also that there have been a significant number of people that have benefited from those units over the years. So with that, I'll be supporting the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Darling. Councillor Murray-Benge.
Thank you, sir, for reminding us that this policy is ring-fenced, housing for the elderly. I think that's important to remember, and it means that we're challenged in this next step as we take a district-wide approach to everything we do. But I have to congratulate our staff, because this horrible event that happened for Waihi Beach meant our staff worked overtime to make sure there was no deaths. And then they've rehoused people, and they've done everything that they possibly could. It is great regret that these units have to be demolished, but there is no alternative. And so therefore I'm not happy, but I am regret that we have to be at this stage, and we have to just do what we've got to do. I support the motions.
Thank you, Councillor Murray-Benge. I've got Councillor Wickers next.
Yeah, so just recognising that the decision is around whether we demolish or not demolish. I think the alternative of not demolishing has got far greater consequences to us as a council. I acknowledge that for the people who are affected, this would be of high significance to them. Acknowledge all that, but the consequences of not demolishing, the alternative, can we fix them up to be safe? I think it's clear that we can't. So I will be supporting the motion to demolish.
Thank you. Councillor Joyce.
Yeah, I mean, all said and done, we can't put people back in there, right? So it's not safe. We know it's not safe. So that decision is clear. I think where the things got a bit muddied is because there were some comments that I understand, when Kerry's spoken to that already, that were talking about potential future directions. I take Councillor Henry's point that we need to take this community along with us. It's a difficult decision, not in terms of whether we make it or not, but in terms of the impact on the community. Everything I'm interested in is bringing the community along, explaining where we are, and making sure that when we make the next decision, which is going to be a lot more difficult, over what we do for Waihi Beach's elderly community, bearing in mind Don's comment, I wasn't going to mention it because I thought it was confidential, but you know, the current account deficit is a real issue. And so, you know, it's going to be a difficult conversation about what we do next with elderly housing. So I welcome the fact that we'll have the PwC report given to us, because I think we do need to have a look at the wider portfolio. You know, if the current account is 1.4 million in the red, and we've told people in the 2021 long-term plan that this thing's going to break even, then we've got some issues. Now, I realise some of those issues are historical, go back beyond that long-term plan, and I realise there were measures taken in that long-term plan to try to fix that. But from the number that Don's just given out, we haven't got there yet. So today we have to demolish. It's not safe not to, but I do think we've got more difficult conversations to have with the people of Waihi Beach, who, after all, provided this property and provided these units, and will need a really good explanation of why we can't, you know, do something there, but also to our wider community about our elder housing plans.
Thank you, Councillor Joyce. Councillor Thwaites.
Yeah, I wasn't going to speak because I'm more than happy to, but I just need to clarify a point just made by that former speaker. those current account balances have been included in every council agenda, and then they move to performance and monitoring agendas for the last 15 years. They're all public information, Rodney. They're nothing, well, that's they're public information. You can go back. Well, there you go. So
it's
I
Councillor
needed to
Thwaites
clarify
speaking.
that because there's been a lot of statements made about operating like a petty cash outfit and all sorts of things. We run our accounting system. We don't, and it's public information. So,
Okay. I'm going to speak on this one. So look, this is actually quite straightforward. We have a report saying it'd be unsafe to house elderly tenants here, and there's been reports in the paper that previous tenants saying they'd be terrified to move back there. Rebuilding these units in this spot is a non-starter. Further discussion will be needed on where to from here, but there's no option but to demolish this unit, and we wouldn't dream of putting elderly tenants back in this spot. So I'm voting for this one. Are there any other speakers? Yeah, would you like your right to reply, Deputy Mayor Scrimgeour?
Just very quickly, I think the discussion has highlighted this. This is the only responsible course is to demolish these houses, and I look forward, though, I want to highlight the comment that Mr. Gowdy made in public forum about suggesting there are potential other sites in Waihi Beach that could be considered. So I look forward to the day, it may be some time away, when we have projects brought before us that could advance the cause of elderly housing.
Great, thank you. And with that, we'll put the motion, which is recommendations 1, 2, and 3. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. It's been a long one. So I think we'll break for morning tea while it's still morning, and we'll come back here at 11:40. Thank you. we'll make a start, please. Okay, so we move on to the Mayor's report, my report on page 74, item 10.5. I'll take it as read, although I will just add about the first item there about future for local government, just to signal the date of the SGM, the Special General Meeting for LGNZ, which is, I think, on the 11th, it's coming up, and the intention for us to workshop our position, noting that a broad brush consensus is required, and there's no opportunity to amend the consensus at this point, as I understand it. And also noting there's been extensive opportunities for elected members to give their views online and through Hui. So with that, I shall take my report as read and take any questions. Councillor Coxhead.
Just actually on that future for local government, in terms of the consensus, can you give us any idea of what was actually, well, partially agreed there?
I think it would be unwise for me to try to remember all that offhand, and the final wording is actually being marked up as we speak. I think it's coming out tomorrow, and that will be circulated to all elected members throughout the country, and then you can have a good read of that then. Yeah. Councillor Murray Bench.
With the last two things on local government, the Tauranga City, and I think yourself, sir, went to Wellington to speak with the government and the opposition about the development around Tauriko. Can you highlight how successful that was? Was anybody listening?
That was in my previous report, wasn't it?
I thought it's getting closer. And
Well, I have had meetings with ministers and MPs in Wellington, some alongside with the commissioners and some not, and I would gauge those as being successful, and that we have broad political support for the upgrades on State Highway 29 and Tauriko upgrades, yes.
Have you had a chance to speak about the need for State Highway 2 to Punator Mokoroa to come back onto the 10-year plan?
That was included in those conversations.
Sorry?
That was included in those conversations.
Positive?
Yeah, I mean, I wasn't getting an answer on the spot from ministers, but they received it, yeah. Councillor Coxhead.
Just on the Te Whatu Ora presentation, we were asked to provide some input and guidance in terms of boundaries for our region, and I just wondered if that had been done or if this staff have actually dealt with that.
So that hasn't happened yet. So my understanding was that they were going to provide their draft boundaries to us, and then we comment. So it's like.
So we haven't received their correspondence
No.
yet? Okay.
Not
thank
as
you.
far as I'm aware. Councillor Henry. Oh, sorry, no, Councillor Granger was next.
Thank you. Just a point of clarification on the future for local government. I think I heard you say that the draft that's coming out tomorrow is sort of the final, and no correspondence will be entered into. So what is the point of a meeting to vote on if that's...
Well, in theory, we can vote against it. But the overall thrust has been that you're never going to get everyone in agreement on this sort of thing, and it's a vast topic and lots of different recommendations. But what President Sam Broughton was saying was that, if you agree with 80% of it and can live with the other 20%, then that's what we should be going for. But he's not going to have 70 councils trying to amend recommendations at this point. That's what those consensus Hui's were about. Okay, Councillor Henry.
I can't see you on my screen at the moment, but did I see on your list of engagements that you were at the opening of the new shed in Karikari on Middlebrook Drive? Is that in that?
Yeah, that's actually my next report, which I've already written, actually. So it gets confusing. So yes, I was at the opening of the men's shed, community van building, and there's one more organisation that eludes me right now, but yes, I was at the opening of that building.
Yeah. So was the invitation extended to the other representatives of the?
I was invited. I played no part in
Oh,
who else
you're
was
invited by
invited. No.
the groups that were going to be in the buildings, is that what you're saying?
So at that opening was obviously me, the group representatives from the groups there, and Tangata Whenua.
So you're telling me that they invited you? It wasn't a...
I think it was a staff thing.
If it was staff, I'm just asking, was the invitation extended to the other elected members of the ward?
I'm not sure. I don't know. I don't know the answer to that.
Well, that's a question to staff now.
Yeah. I don't think anyone can answer that in this. I can't answer. I didn't do the invitations and no one here did.
The invitation didn't come from the governance team, so as far as I'm aware, it was an external invitation.
Can that be followed through to see if that invitation was actually action from the council operational staff, and in future alert that all events like this in the community, invitations are sent to the appropriate councillors or representatives? Thank you.
Yeah, I think each event is different, and those decisions can be made, and if I'm sure that ward councillors, it would make sense on many of those occasions for them to be invited.
So the process is, Councillor Henry, that if it is an event that is organised by the council, that it comes to governance and goes out from the elected members' calendar to the councillors. So if it's one that might have been missed, can investigate, but usually they would come to us to go out, and you'd be visible in the elected members' calendars.
I'm just asking you to investigate it, because if it did by some chance get missed by council staff, that they are aware that that is, would be preferable for the community councillors to be involved.
Can I clarify, Councillor Henry, because you seem to be dancing around the point. Can I understand that you weren't invited and felt you should be? Is that what you're getting at?
I'm not talking about me personally. I'm talking about as a progress, as a point of procedure.
Okay, thank you. Right.
I'm saying that it would have been nice to be invited.
Yeah. Okay. Are there any more questions on my report? No? Okay. In which case I'm happy to move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Murray Benge. Put that, assume there's no debate. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And so I will, if there's no information for receipt, we will call for mover and seconder the public be excluded from the following parts of this meeting. Councillor Granger, Councillor Soul, all those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. So we'll just give a moment for our visitors to exit.